In this video, we are going to take a look at if it is possible to let this dress out through the zipper. So we're going to reach inside, see if we have any seam allowance there, and then we're going to try to expand it a little. We're hoping to give this client about an extra inch of wiggle room. So let's take a look. So I have my hand here in between the outer layer and the lining layers, and this is my hand inside of here, okay? And I'm reaching along the side of the zipper. Actually, I'm gonna pull this zipper down and only grab 1/2 of it. All right, so this is my hand, can you see that? We're gonna reach, we're grabbing the seam allowance inside and pulling it to the outside. Okay, this is a good sign. Do you see this? This is a bunch of seam allowance. That's great. Now this corner, this is the top of our zipper. This is our neckline or back line, and this is our zipper. Great. So now we're gonna release the seam allowances tacked toward the back, and we're gonna release that and see what we're working with. Great. So we can give her about 3/8 of an inch. And so I need to start ripping this from the correct side of the garment so that I can figure out where I am and where I can get myself some fabric. So I am releasing this entirely from the outside. And look at that, that's still connected. I don't really know why it's still connected. This is the seam that I thought that I was ripping. So this is interesting because we need to keep going, because we need to get all the way inside. Okay, you see all of that? That's all of that extra seam allowance that we were looking at from the inside. So that's great news. We still have that to work with. And if we have to sew the lining down further from the zipper on the inside where you can't see it, that's okay. So if we've got seam allowance on the outer and not on the inner on the lining, we can make that work. That is okay. So we've got a bunch of room right there and only a little bit of room right there. But this is the lining. We can extend the lining with additional material, or we could even just serge that edge and sew it flat so that we can get ourselves another 1/4 of an inch at least. These are the kinds of things that you can't anticipate. So even though I've let out roughly 1 billion zippers, sometimes you don't anticipate what you're gonna find. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that there will always be tons of ways to do it. None are right, none are wrong. All of them just are. And it's always your job to puzzle it together. So that's the real secret of sewing. No magic, just a lot of creativity. One other important detail, I really universally believe that we should do one side at a time. One sleeve at a time, one side of the zip at a time. So I don't want to go ripping that other side out at all until I know how I'm going to address this side. It helps because if you want to walk away from the project, which is fine, don't forget, you can always walk away and come back later, but you don't want to have the entire thing exposed and completely forget where you were on both sides. Stick to one side until you've solved your problem. Then you can move to the other side and kill it, because you'll have figured it out and you'll feel really great about that. Let me show you where we are in the seam ripping. This is the strap, and this is the back where that zipper is. This is still attached right there. That's what we're taking apart. So you'll notice these pleats need to be sewn together. So I'm gonna pin this up right now and quickly run that under the machine to baste those pleats together so that they stay the same. Sew in the direction of the fold so that your foot is pressing that forward versus going this way where the foot would be fighting each pleat. And you can use a wide stitch on this, get close to the edge, and don't forget that the feed with your thinner foot is going to be less balanced than with your normal foot. So just remember that if the fabric feels like it's all over the place, it is. Hold it a little tighter than you normally would need to. Remember, this stitch is going to be covered. We won't even need to take this out. This is purely to help us. Now we're ready to continue seam ripping. Okay, let's orient again. This is where the zipper was. This is my pleated outer layer, a stabilized liner facing outward, and then another liner facing the body, okay? Let's treat these two layers as one. We're going to move the edges together and pin them and baste again. Again, these basting stitches are they're really in place of extra pins so that each step, it's a little bit easier to get everything to come together. Ah, yes, that's better. Oh my gosh. Yay. Okay, now I'm going to baste there again, starting at the bottom so that I'm feeding in the direction of the pleat fold. Great. The point of this again is to treat these two layers as one as we're putting the zipper back on. I'm lifting the presser foot a lot because, like I said, the narrower zipper foot makes it hard to feed the fabric evenly. So it's pushing, you see that? It's rolling up and it's pushing. I need to keep smoothing that as we go along. That is because of the foot, it's nothing else. Okay, great. So that is now basted together. Ooh, okay. Let me see. Can you see from there? Can you barely see this stitching right there? You see that? That was where the original stitching was. So we are going to be able to get her a good solid 1/2 inch like I hoped. Oh, that's great news. One more time, let's orient. Strap, lining, outer edge that we just expanded. Now we're ready to put that zipper back on our new seam edge from there to there, right? Original stitching, new stitching. This is great. If you watch our channel very often, you will notice that I am a hesitant pinner. I don't love using pins. And in this case, we've got a stretchy fabric. I really want to put a pin at the beginning, put a pin at the end, but I am going to feel the differential. Differential, let me see if I can give you the simplest explanation of differential. The difference between how the fabric stretches and feeds from the top and the bottom. Feed dogs, presser foot, the way that you pull on it, all of these different pressures affect the differential. That's the easiest way to think of it. And for me, I like to feel it in my hands. I give myself a few pins to orient and stick things in place as markers, but then I want to feel it as I'm attaching it. That's what's right for me. So I'm going to take that pin out. There are different types of zipper feet. In this case, we're just using this really narrow foot versus, say, a hidden foot. We can talk about that on a different video. So give me a comment if you want to see the hidden zipper foot. It's pretty cool. I love it. So we'll get to that next. Ooh, my dress is falling. This is a very slinky material, which is surprisingly heavy, so it wants to keep slipping off of my table. All right, and I just want to be really careful that we don't get that needle through the teeth, or we won't be able to zip it, and that will be why, but it may not be obvious that that's why. And we are getting really close to the edge here. Great. Okay. One side of the zipper is back on. This is when I like to stop and make sure that we can zip it. If we can't, we need to look at our stitching and we need to figure out what's going on. Ooh, great. Oh, that's good. So that could use a press, but that is good. We like that. My zipper tape is still sticking up here because my outer is not connected to my lining there. Don't worry about that. We're going to finish that next. But for right now, we know that the zipper is in the outer layer and we can zip it. So that is great. Next up, I'm going to iron all of this nice and flat and give myself kind of a reset on this surface. So let's go over to the iron. So what we're pressing here is I'm going to kind of finger comb my pleats out there and press this zipper tape edge in. I'm doing that because I think there's a really good chance that I'm going to have to sew down the lining by hand, and I want to give myself a nice flat surface to attach that to. I'm going to put a quick pin in my lining, and I'm going to use my fingers to press the teeth away from the tape in the seam allowance. Careful here because you're really close to that seam, so just be careful with that. But you see how that's pressing that so that we've got this nice surface to work with? Yeah, that's great. Ooh, hot. Okay, that's good. Now, we need to find out if this will reach. Because as you can remember, we had much less lining than outer. We should be good here. But I'm laying this section flat and seeing where does my lining come to. So if we pinch right there at our original stitching, that puts the lining all the way back here, right? Okay, that's okay though. We have more flexibility with the inside of the garment because we can do some really creative hand stitching to get this to be where we want. So I'd like to sew this back together. You see how I did that? Back together. I'm going to sew that back together on the machine. So let's leave that part for now. We're just going to look at our spacing and figure out what we need to do, but I think that we should serge that edge, because with a serged edge butting up against the tape there, we can hand whip that down and that'll look really nice. It'll be secure, no raw edges. We might, ooh, hold on, I just had an idea. Okay. If I press the tape the wrong direction, the opposite of what I just asked you to do, but I place this lining closer in there, look at that. We can enclose it. We don't have enough seam allowance. If you can just barely see the shadow of our old stitching, it's right there. That's where the original stitching was, which means we got the 1/2 inch almost that we wanted. But we're gonna hide that raw edge under our zipper tape so that we don't have to jam that under the serger. Wins for everyone. All right, let's close up the top and then we will come back to this final seam. Let's orient again. We're over at the machine. Getting lost in these garments when you're going inside this way is common. I do it all the time. Always orient yourself. Strap, back, top. So watch what I'm gonna do here because I'm gonna flip it like that, and the zipper is going in, okay? You see that? I'm gonna do it one more time. Correct side of the garment, lining, flip it, and zipper faces in. We are sewing just the top portion back together. That's what's going to give us that nice flat edge and cover that zipper tape. We're lining up the edges of the fabric. not the edge of the zipper tape. That's just hanging. And I don't even cut that off either. I'll show you, but I use that later to help me create a nice hard corner when we need that. You're gonna see 2 lines of stitching right here. This one, that's kind of coming away a little bit right there, that is under stitching. Don't worry about that right now. We're going a little bit above that. So let's put this only down on the machine. And again, while we're at the machine here, let's look one more time, peek at this. I'm pushing the zipper teeth in, okay? So the zipper teeth are here, over here, okay? All right. Oh, let me turn down my stitch. I want this to be a decently tight stitch. All right, we're coming up to the tape right there. Okay, so we just stitched right there. That is what it looks like right now. But when we turn that seam allowance under and fold it back on itself, it's going to be nice and clean. You see that? Oh, except for that little boop, thread sticking up there. It's going to be nice and clean right there. Now, we just got to close that lining up, and we are good. We're back for the last step, which is getting this raw edge to sit under our zipper tape. So here's my waist seam. Here's my waist seam. Match those up first. We're placing that right flat and under just enough so that the tape will cover it. And then we're going to put a pin here. In this case of letting out and not having quite the lining that we need, we won't sew this from the inside by machine like we normally would. We are going to whip this by hand. I do believe that whipping by hand is still plenty strong, especially when we have the security of this zipper tape holding it in place. So I'm just going to finish pinning here, and when we get to the top is a little tricky, but I am still going to fold under that silicone elastic. It's got that gripper elastic at the top that helps it stick to your skin, you know? And that might give me a little trouble getting my straight pin through, but there we go. Oop, there we go. And I'm going to flatten that as much as possible. So it's a little messy up here, but that's where hand sewing it really shines, is we're going to stitch all of this down, but we still need to tuck that elastic edge under. So we're going to hand sew and iron that bump into submission. So let's get our hand sewing needle and get whipping. We're starting up here at the top. Now, also keep in mind, for this particular spot, we are going to put that hook and eye at the top of the dress back on top of this exact spot. So we will be able to secure it even a little bit better after we finish this. And that's good. That'll give it a little more support. So I'm going to kind of take these pins out as we're going to make sure that I am catching enough of it. You don't want to take the pins out later and find out that you actually missed a spot that you thought you got. And now we're picking up a little bit of zipper tape and a little bit of lining each pull. There we go. And let's keep these as discreet as possible, but we're going to do quite a few stitches because we really do want this to be strong. So let's keep it close to both of the edges, but pick up a fair amount of fabric so that, we got a little run there. These little knots that you're seeing form, this is why I love using wax skein, but in this case we do need this pink, so we are just using regular 100% polyester Tex 25 weight thread, but we just gotta move slow. But you see how well that's holding? As we go, you can really see that it's flat, it's flush, and it's strong. Let's press that again, just while we're there. You see what I mean? You saw how bumpy it was. But look at it now. That is really nice, flat, flush. And when we're letting out, as opposed to taking in, when we take in a garment, we have all the flexibility in the world because we're making it smaller. We have all the fabric that we need. But when we're letting out, that's when it gets really creative, all right? Tricky even, because we gotta figure out where are we gonna get that fabric? How are we gonna make it sit so that it looks like we didn't alter it, but we did. See, I'm taking large bites of fabric, but not super visible. And we're going all the way down. And I am kind of tugging gently as I go to keep it tight. Also, very important, check periodically, but you should not be putting any stitches on the correct side. We are only sewing the seam allowances, the lining, and the zipper tape together. Super important. Oop, and I pulled a little, you see, I pulled that a little too far right there. We want to make sure that we keep those raw edges inside. That's the point of doing this, is keeping everything all sewn together, secure and tight. So let's make sure we stick that guy back in there. Anytime I want to do that too, I like to use the head of my needle to smooth, or the point of my needle to smooth. I find that really convenient on a little bump of fabric or a little edge. All right, now we're getting further down the zip. So we're getting to the section of the zipper where we do now have enough seam allowance that we have folded it over. So we just want to make that transition smooth. But you'll notice now that my lining is on top of my zipper tape, right? So you see that transition right there along the waist. Oh, let me get that little knot. When I get little knots like that, I like to pull them with my fingernails and gently loosen them, kind of like you would with a chain necklace. Almost there. And again, periodically tugging, holding, tugging, and ironing to see where I'm at. Great. And then we're going to just slide our needle between, can't see it from the outside, very important, but we're just hiding that thread tail and pulling taut one more time. Now, the last very important test. Can we still zip it? Yes. Ah, that's wonderful. So we've completed one entire side, and now we're ready to tackle the other. Thanks so much for joining me on the process of letting out this zipper. For tons more technical skills, tips, tricks, and everything sewing related, check out the rest of the videos on our channel. Like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you at the next one.